Well, hello. We're going to do a Bible quick read. Going to read the Bible for 10 minutes. We're not going to give much commentary. We're not going to give much explanation. We're not going to really cross-reference. Sometimes I have to go back and forth because there's lots of kings and they have confusing names. Sometimes the son of this king is really the grandson, but they don't tell you that. They just say the son. And you're like, wait, I'm confused. Anyway, southern nation of Judah, northern nation of Israel. They were one nation, then they split into two nations. And we're going to read from the split until the northern nation, called Israel, goes to exile. Okay? So here we go. 2 Kings, chapter 13, 10 minutes on the clock. Excuse me. Right here. Jehoash rested with his ancestors, and Jeroboam sat on his throne. Jehoash was buried in Samaria with the kings of Israel. So Jehoash, king of Israel. Okay. Jehoash, Jeroboam is his son. Okay. Now, there was Jeroboam, son of Nebat, the very first king of Israel, who screwed everything up. Now, Solomon caused the kingdom to be split, but Jeroboam, he did something dumb. And people and all the kings of Israel until this king, like 10, 15 kings later, something like that, still screwing things up because of Jeroboam's first screw up. But now there's another Jeroboam. Let's see if he fixes it. When Elisha, first we got to read about Elisha. When Elisha became sick with the illness from which he died, King Jehoash of Israel went down and wept over him and said, my father, the chariots and horsemen of Israel. The same thing happened when Elijah went up in a whirlwind. Elisha said, my father, the chariots and horsemen of Israel. So maybe that's just a way of saying you're leaving soon. I don't know. Maybe it's become an idiom for Elijah died. My father. So now Elisha's dying. My father, maybe you just repeat it. I don't know. Anyway, Elisha responded, get a bow and arrows. So King Jehoash of Israel got a bow and arrows. Then Elisha said to the king of Israel, grasp the bow. So the king grasped it, and Elisha put his hands on the king's hands. Elisha said, open the east window. So he opened it. I guess he took his hands off long enough to open it. Elisha said, shoot. So he shot. Then Elisha said, the Lord's arrow of victory. Yes, the arrow of victory over Aram. You are to strike down the Arameans and Aphek until you have put an end to them. Okay, a little object lesson, hey, just like the arrow flies, you're going to defeat them. Then Elisha said, take the arrows. So he took them. Then Elisha said to the king of Israel, strike the ground. So he struck the ground 3 times and stopped. He just got done talking about Aram. You're going to have a victory over Israel. The man of God, Elisha, was angry with him and said, you should have struck the ground 5 or 6 times. Then you would have struck down Aram until you had put an end to them. But now you will only strike down Aram 3 times. Kind of strange, huh? You wonder, did Jehoash, the king, know that if he struck the ground more times, he would have defeated Aram? They were talking about defeating Aram. I don't know. That's kind of strange. Okay, then Elisha died and was buried. Now, Moabite raiders used to come into the land in the spring of the year. Once, as the Israelites were burying a man, suddenly they saw a raiding party of Moabites. So they threw the man into Elisha's tomb. When the man touched Elisha's bones, the man revived and stood up. Okay, Elisha even doing miracles after he died. Okay. King Hazael of Aram oppressed Israel throughout the reign of Jehoahaz. 1 second, guys. I could have swore up here, Jehoash. Jehoahaz must have been the king before Jehoash. I don't recall. But the Lord was gracious to them, had compassion on them, and turned toward them, Jehoahaz, because of his covenant with Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. He was not willing to destroy them. Even now, he has not banished them from his presence. Okay, so they're not banished yet. King Hazael of Aram died, and his son Ben-Hadad became king in his place. Jehoash, son of Jehoahaz, took Jehoash as the king. Elisha said, you're going to defeat them 3 times. So he's Jehoahaz's son. Any of this confusing? Don't worry about it. Go back and study it later. Then Jehoash, son of Jehoahaz, took back from Ben-Hadad, son of Hazael, the cities that Hazael had taken in war from Jehoash's father, Jehoahaz. Jehoash defeated Ben-Hadad 3 times and recovered the city of Israel. Man. Today we got Ben, Frank, Dan, but sometimes there's Frank, Franklin, Frankie. So in the second year of Israel's king Jehoash, son of Jehoahaz, Amaziah, son of Joash, became king of Judah. He was 25 years old when he became king, and he reigned 29 years in Jerusalem. His mother's name was Jehoadin. She was from Jerusalem. Amaziah did what was right in the Lord's sight, but not like his ancestor David. He did everything his father Joash had done. I'm guessing he didn't take down the high places, yet the high places were not taken down, and the people continued sacrificing and burning incense on the high places. As soon as the kingdom was firmly in his grasp, Amaziah killed his servants who had killed his father the king. That's right. These 2 guys with very similar names to each other, of course, killed King Joash. Killed King Joash. So Amaziah killed them. However, he did not put the children of the killers to death, as it is written in the book of the law of Moses, where the Lord commanded, fathers are not to be put to death because of their children, and children are not to be put to death because of fathers. Instead, each one will be put to death for his own sin. Okay, good. So this king kind of knows the Bible. Amaziah killed 10,000 Edomites in Salt Valley. He took Selah in battle and called it Joktheel, which is still its name today. Amaziah then sent messengers to Jehoash, son of Jehoahaz, son of Jehu, king of Israel, and challenged him, Jehoash, come, let's meet face to face. So the king of Judah wants to battle, have them in an old-fashioned throwdown. I mean, God was like letting him defeat them 3 cities, right? Okay. King Jehoash of Israel sent word to King Amaziah of Judah, saying, the thistle in Lebanon it's story time with Amaziah, with King Jehoash. The thistle in Lebanon once sent a message to the cedar in Lebanon, saying, give your daughter to my son as a wife. Then a wild animal in Lebanon passed by and trampled the thistle. Can't no thistle be asking no cedar tree for, come on, you're a thistle. A thistle is a thorn bush. You have indeed defeated Edom, and you have become overconfident. Enjoy your glory and stay at home. Why should you stir up such trouble that you fall, you and Judah with you? But Amaziah would not listen. So King Jehoash of Israel advanced. He and King Amaziah of Judah met face to face at Beth Shemesh that belonged to Judah. Judah was routed before Israel, and each man fled to his own tent. The thistle was burned by the animal in Lebanon, was trampled. King Jehoash of Israel captured Judah's king Amaziah, son of Joash, son of Ahaziah, at Beth Shemesh. Then Jehoash went to Jerusalem and broke down 200 yards of Jerusalem's wall from the Ephraim gate to the corner gate. Yikes. He took all the gold and silver, all the articles found in the Lord's temple and in the treasuries of the king's palace, and some hostages. Then he returned to Samaria. I assumed that Amaziah, king of Israel, wouldn't do much damage. He would be like, okay, whatever, we'll fight. He fights them, he beats some of them up, and then he leaves. Because Israel and Judah, they're different nations now, but they're still under Yahweh, supposedly. They're still supposedly under Yahweh. But later on, whenever completely foreign kings come, this is the same stuff they do. They break down walls, take stuff from the temple, destroy stuff. So Israel is acting like a foreign enemy to Judah. Man, no good. The rest of the events of Jehoash's reign, along with his accomplishments, his might, and how he waged war against King Amaziah of Judah, are written in the historical record of Israel's king. Jehoash rested with his ancestors, and he was buried in Samaria with the kings of Israel. His son Jeroboam became king in his place. We read about Jeroboam earlier, and then we went back in time, and we're going forward. Now we're back to Jeroboam, the second Jeroboam, because the original Jeroboam was the first king of Israel. Now we got another guy named Jeroboam. That's fine. Judah's king Amaziah, son of Joash, lived 15 years after the death of Israel's king Jehoash, son of Jehoahaz. The rest of the events of Amaziah's reign are written in the historical record of Judah's king. A conspiracy was formed against him in Jerusalem, and he fled to Lachish. However, men were sent after him to Lachish, and they put him to death there. They carried Amaziah back. His father died from a conspiracy. Man, they carried, or assassination or whatever. They carried him back on horses, and he was buried in Jerusalem with his ancestors in the city of David. Then all the people of Judah took Azariah, who was 16 years old, and made him king in place of his father Amaziah. After Amaziah the king rested with his ancestors, Azariah rebuilt Elath and restored it to Judah. That's good. Okay, guys. 3, 2, 1. There we go. We'll go ahead and stop there for now. Okay, Israel's king Jeroboam, the reign of Jeroboam the second. So, all right, guys. You're confused by all the names, coming fast and furious. You're like, BJ, you didn't say that name right. It's really pronounced this way in the Hebrew. Okay, if you're that smart, instead of listening to me, scroll down to the verse by verse notes. Copy the web address, paste it into your web bar, hit enter, and guess what? Verse by verse teaching from people 10 times smarter than me. Detailed, exegetical, hermeneutical, whatever, long teaching for that stuff. But for now, we'll go ahead and quit this 10-minute quick read. See you on the next Very Basic Bible.